They say the way to a man's heart is through his body, through touch, through sex. And for years, women have been fed this idea like gospel, that if you keep him satisfied in bed, you'll keep him close in life. But what if I told you that's only one layer of a man? And it's not even the deepest one. Because here's the truth no one's telling you. A man doesn't stay because you turn him on. He stays because you turn something on inside him that he didn't even know was asleep. I'm talking about the man beyond the surface, the one no one asks about, the one who silently carries pressure, pride, purpose, and pain, the one who doesn't just want to be touched, he wants to be understood. Not just needed, but respected. Not just admired, but felt in a way that makes him feel seen, not just useful. See, most women are taught how to attract a man, but almost none are taught how to reach him, to speak to the soul beneath the strength, to touch the part of him he doesn't show in public because the world told him not to. But here's the secret that changes everything. When a woman can honor that hidden depth in a man with presence, patience, and powerful softness, she doesn't just win his loyalty, she awakens his devotion. That's what we're diving into today. This isn't about tricks, texts, or bedroom games. It's about emotional mastery, soul-level connection. The kind of insight that makes a man feel like he's finally come home, in your presence, in your energy, in your love. I'm going to share 6 raw, powerful truths about men that most women have never been told. And once you understand them, you won't just stand out, you'll become unforgettable. So if you're ready to stop playing small in love and start speaking to the part of a man that no one else sees, stay with me. This might just change the way you love forever. 1. Being seen and accepted without judgment. Have you ever truly looked into a man's eyes and asked yourself, what is he hiding behind that calm, collected face? What storms is he silently navigating? What disappointments has he buried beneath his achievements? What fears has he locked away behind the daily grind of being strong? And what parts of himself has he silenced just to be accepted by a world that barely pauses to ask him how he feels? Let's stop pretending that men don't feel deeply. Let's stop assuming that emotional stillness equals emotional absence. Because in truth, most men are walking through life with a deep ache. An ache not to be fixed, not to be judged, not to be told how to be, but simply to be seen, truly seen and accepted exactly as they are. Not for their success, not for their performance, not for how well they hold it together, but for the quiet humanity they carry within them. The same humanity that most of the world has taught them to hide. You see, the greatest misunderstanding about men is this. People think men don't want to be vulnerable. The truth is, they crave it. They crave the freedom to take off the mask, to lay down the armor, to show their messy, imperfect, unfinished selves to someone and not be punished for it. But that kind of vulnerability isn't free. It costs trust. It costs emotional safety. And most men have paid that price once before and got burned by criticism, by mockery, by withdrawal, by silence. So they learn to hold it in. They learn that silence is safer. They learn that it's better to be respected for their strength than rejected for their weakness. And this is where you come in, not as a savior, but as a witness. Because when a woman offers a man the rare space to simply exist, to be human without performance, he blooms slowly, cautiously, but undeniably. He begins to speak more, he laughs more, he holds you closer. Not because he needs you to fix him, but because your presence doesn't require him to be fixed. That is power, that is connection. That is what Stoicism looks like in love, not in the suppression of emotion, but in the courageous presence of it. To the untrained eye, he might seem stoic in the cold, closed-off sense, but a true stoic man feels everything. He just chooses carefully where to show it. When he shows it to you, he's handing you something sacred. The moment you respond with gentleness instead of judgment, curiosity instead of correction, and presence instead of pressure, you create a sanctuary for his soul. Think about that. How many men in your life have that kind of emotional sanctuary? A place where they can say, I don't have it all together. and not fear that you'll pull away. A place where they can cry and not feel emasculated. Where they can say, I'm scared. And no, you won't see them as weak. You don't need to have the answers. You don't need to play therapist. You just need to see the man behind the mask and let him know that he is enough, even when the world says he's not. That kind of acceptance builds a bond deeper than any physical intimacy ever could. It says, I'm here for your essence, not your image. That essence is where the real man lives. The boy who once dreamed big dreams, the son who longed for his father's approval, the worker who's tired of pretending, the partner who wants to love without fear of being shamed for it. When you accept that man, you give him a kind of emotional oxygen he rarely gets. He breathes easier around you. He stops performing. He starts choosing you, not because he's desperate, but because he feels whole. This is the foundation of love-stoic connection, not built on grand gestures or constant emotional highs, but on the subtle, quiet art of being real together. The next time a man in your life is silent, don't rush to fill the space. Don't demand an answer. Don't assume the worst. Just sit with him. Ask him, what are you carrying today? And then listen, not to respond, but to understand. That act alone is a revolution. It dismantles decades of programming that taught him to hide. It invites him to bring his full self into the relationship. Not just his achievements, but his fears, his doubts, his dreams. And when he does, what you'll find is a depth of love that's rare, unshakable, and enduring. Because here's what most women never realize. When a man feels fully accepted for who he is, he doesn't run, he roots, he invests. He gives more than you imagined possible, not because you asked, but because he finally feels safe to give. There is no seduction more powerful than emotional safety, no connection more intimate than one built on truth, and no pleasure more lasting than the peace of being fully known. That is why being seen and accepted without judgment makes men happier than sex. Because sex touches the body, but acceptance touches the soul. And a soul that feels safe will never stop choosing the one who gave it refuge. That's the truth that most women don't know, but now you do. In this, you hold the quiet superpower that unlocks the most guarded parts of a man's heart. And if you use it not to manipulate, but to genuinely understand, you'll find that love becomes less about control and more about connection. Less about fireworks and more about firelight. Steady, strong, enduring. That's the kind of love that Stoicism teaches us to build. Not through loud declarations, but through consistent presence. Not through perfection, but through patience. That is the beginning of a love story most people never write. And it starts with seeing a man not as who the world says he should be, but as who he really is. 2, feeling like a hero in your eyes. Have you ever noticed how a man lights up when you genuinely appreciate something he did? Not just the big dramatic gestures, but the little things. Carrying your bags, fixing something broken without being asked. Defending you in a conversation when no one else caught it. There's a quiet spark that flickers behind his eyes in those moments. Not arrogance, not ego, but purpose. And if you've ever seen that look, that silent moment, when a man feels respected, needed, and seen for his effort, then you've witnessed one of the most powerful emotional experiences he can have, feeling like a hero in your eyes. This isn't about inflating a man's ego or reducing yourself to praise him blindly. No, this is about understanding a deep primal truth about masculine psychology, one that Stoicism often reinforces without ever saying it directly. Men are wired to serve a purpose, to make a difference, to protect and provide, not in some outdated patriarchal sense, but in the sacred act of creating safety, strength, and leadership in the lives of those they love. When a man feels that his presence matters to you, not because of what he has, but because of who he chooses to be, that's when you activate something powerful in him, something ancient, something loyal. That hero is not the guy with the cape and the muscles. He's the man who stays up late researching how to help you when you're sick, the one who quietly shoulders stress so you don't have to feel it, the one who's terrified of failure but keeps showing up anyway, the one who works not for applause but because your well-being is part of his mission. And here's the real secret. When you reflect that energy back to him with respect, admiration, and belief, you give him emotional fuel that no physical act can match. That's why this makes men happier than sex, because sex can be momentary. But respect lingers, respect builds, respect bonds. But too often, women are taught to value romantic gestures and overlook the everyday strength it takes for a man to be consistent, dependable, and quietly strong. And the tragedy is when he doesn't feel like his efforts matter. When his actions are invisible, he begins to emotionally starve. He starts questioning his role in your life. He begins to shrink in the places where he once wanted to expand. And not because he's weak, but because every hero needs a reason to rise. You are that reason. And if you can give him space to be your hero, not by making him responsible for your happiness, but by allowing him to contribute to it, then you create a connection that inspires him to rise higher every day. This doesn't mean pretending to be helpless. It means inviting his strength. It means letting him know that the way he shows up for you makes a difference, that you see him, that you trust him, that you believe in his ability to figure it out, to protect, to lead, to love you with intention. When a man hears those words, I trust you, I feel safe with you, thank you for always being there, they land deeper than any compliment about his body or looks. They tell him, you're my safe place and I see you as strong. That's not manipulation, that's truth. And when it's spoken with sincerity, it makes him want to earn your trust again and again, not out of obligation, but out of pride. This is why love Stoic relationships last, because they're not built on drama, mind games, or emotional chaos. They're built on mutual respect, on seeing the strength in each other and calling it forward. A man who feels like a hero in your eyes will give you everything. His time, his loyalty, his plans for the future, because your belief in him makes him feel limitless. But let's be clear, this doesn't mean praising him for nothing or turning a blind eye to disrespect. Stoicism teaches us to recognize value, not fantasy. This is about celebrating a man who shows up, who does the hard things, who tries even when it's uncomfortable. Because when he's rising to the occasion and you meet that rise with acknowledgement, you make him feel powerful, not over you, but for you. And that kind of power, that's not toxic. That's noble. That's what leadership looks like in love. It's the quiet confidence of knowing you matter. And that is why he'll choose you over and over again, because you don't just love him, you believe in him. Think about the men in your life right now. Have you ever stopped to tell them how much their actions mean to you? Not in a vague, generic way, but in a moment of sincerity. Have you ever said, I saw what you did, and I admire you for it? Have you ever reminded him that his strength isn't invisible, that his efforts don't go unnoticed, that his presence doesn't just fill a space, it shapes it? If you haven't, try it. Watch how his energy shifts. Watch how he softens, how he leans in, how he opens up in places you thought were closed forever. When a man is seen for his noble side, he brings it forward more. When he's seen only for what he lacks, he retreats. You hold more influence than you realize, and you don't have to change who you are to offer it. Just speak to the greatness that's already in him. Let your words be the mirror that reflects his highest self. That's what Stoicism in love looks like. Stillness with purpose, presence with depth. It's not noisy, but it's unforgettable. That is why men crave this feeling more than sex, because it speaks to who they are, not just what they do. And in a world that constantly demands performance, being loved for simply showing up with heart is the rarest reward. That reward comes from you. So if you're ready to connect with your man at a level most women never reach, speak to the hero inside him. Not the version who saves the day perfectly, but the one who wakes up every morning choosing to try. That's the man worth loving. That's the man who will give you his world. And if you're enjoying this deeper understanding of male desire, do me a favor. Like this video and comment number 1 if this part resonated with you. And make sure you subscribe, because what comes next will change the way you think about men forever. We're just getting started. 3. Shared laughter that feels effortless. Have you ever heard a man laugh? Not just a polite chuckle or a distracted smirk, but a deep, full, unguarded laugh that rises from his chest and spills into the room with no filter, no fear, and no shame. If you have, then you've witnessed one of the most honest moments a man can offer. Because laughter, in its purest form, is not just about humor. It's about freedom. It's a temporary surrender of the mental weight he carries. A quiet confirmation that in this moment he is safe enough to let go. That kind of laughter, the kind that makes his eyes water and his stomach ache, is rare. Not because life isn't funny, but because most men live life armored, alert, and emotionally contained. Stoicism doesn't mean emotional coldness. In Jinx, its true form, it means clarity, intention, and control, not absence. And when a man finds himself in the presence of a woman who makes him laugh without trying to impress, who meets the seriousness of life with a wink and a grin, who turns awkwardness into inside jokes and discomfort into shared stories, something powerful begins to shift inside him. He begins to feel that being with her doesn't mean constant effort or performance. It means ease, joy, spontaneity, and joy, especially when it's shared, is one of the most healing forces a man can experience. This is why shared laughter makes men happier than sex. Because while sex may offer release, laughter offers relief. It tells him that he doesn't have to be on all the time. That even in his offbeat moments, in the randomness of life, in the chaos and imperfection, there is lightness. And if she can find joy with him in those little overlooked corners of life, then maybe she sees him in a way no one else does. Think about it. How often are men invited to simply play, to be silly, to be ridiculous, to dance in the kitchen, or laugh at something dumb without being labeled immature or lazy? The world doesn't encourage men to be light-hearted, it pushes them to be serious, ambitious, calculating. Even their free time is often goal-oriented, improving, achieving, measuring. But laughter doesn't measure, laughter doesn't plan, it just is. It belongs to the present. And in that sense, it is profoundly stoic. Because what is stoicism if not the full presence of mind and body in the now? In laughter, there is no past to regret, no future to fear, just two people meeting in a moment of pure unscripted connection. That connection doesn't have to be loud or performative. In fact, it's often the quietest laughs that hit deepest, the kind that emerge from a shared glance when something absurd happens, or from recalling an inside joke that no one else would understand. These moments build intimacy faster than hours of conversation. Because when you laugh with someone, you're not thinking about how you appear. You're just there, real and unrehearsed. And men crave that kind of space more than they'll ever admit. Because while a man may be able to impress many, he can only truly relax with a few. And if you are the one he can relax with, if he can drop his shoulders, loosen his grip, and let the mask fall even just a little, then he will return to you over and over again, not out of habit, but out of peace. Peace is addictive, especially to a man who is used to being needed, not enjoyed, who is used to solving problems, not being part of the fun. Shared laughter tells him, "You're not just useful, you're delightful. I like being with you, not because I need something, but because you make life lighter." That is a powerful message. And it doesn't require you to be a comedian or perform at all. You just have to be there, be present, be open, laugh with him, not at him, laugh about life, not as an escape, but as a celebration of all its ridiculous beauty. Let your humor be a form of intimacy, not sarcasm that cuts, but light that connects. When you build those memories, those times when you both lost it over something stupid, when you couldn't stop smiling, when one word or look brought it all back, that becomes part of your emotional language, your shared rhythm, your unspoken bond. And that bond, though it seems playful, is deeply anchoring. It says this is our world, our joy, our version of love. In that world, he doesn't have to posture or impress, he can just be. And isn't that what everyone wants in love? To be loved not for their perfection, but for their presence. This is what love stoic partnerships understand. That laughter is not a distraction from depth, it is a portal to it. That the moments of levity are not lightweight. They are what make the weight of life bearable. And most importantly, that a man who can laugh freely with you will also cry, confess, and commit more freely too. Because when his walls come down for joy, they stay down for truth. That's what makes this kind of connection sacred. Not just fun, but foundational. So don't underestimate those shared smiles, those absurd moments, those weird inside jokes that no one else gets. They are not just filler. They are not just background noise. They are the music of your connection. And if you can learn to dance to that music with him, if you can bring him into that space where laughter is frequent and effortless, you will give him something few others can. A love that feels like freedom. And in that freedom, he will thrive. He will choose you not just because he wants you, but because with you, he becomes more himself. And that more than sex, more than romance, more than anything else is what makes a man truly happy. 4. A challenge that inspires growth. Have you ever watched a man truly come alive? Not in a moment of comfort or victory, but right in the middle of a challenge that stretches him, tests him, even scares him a little. There's a kind of fire that awakens in a man when he is placed in front of a mountain he's not sure he can climb, but deep down he knows he must. That moment is sacred. It's not about ego or conquest, it's about evolution. Every man at his core has a quiet, constant craving for growth. He might not say it. He might bury it beneath routines and obligations, but it's there. And when the right challenge presents itself, something that calls him into a higher version of himself, that shakes the dust off his soul and reminds him what he's capable of, he transforms, not because someone demanded it, but because something inside of him awakened. This is why a challenge that inspires growth makes men happier than sex. Because while sex satisfies the body, challenge elevates the spirit. Stoicism teaches us that a man's worth is not in what he owns, but in who he becomes. And becoming only happens through adversity, through testing, through stretching past the edge of what feels safe. But here's the truth. Most men don't just want to grow, they want to be seen growing, not for applause, but for support. They want to know that someone believes in their potential, even when they doubt it themselves, especially when they doubt it themselves. That's where you come in, not as a critic, but as a catalyst. Because when a woman believes in a man's growth, not in a way that pressures him, but in a way that sees his capacity, she becomes part of his transformation. Her belief is fuel, her support is structure, her presence is the mirror that reflects back to him, not who he is today, but who he's capable of becoming. And if you've ever been that woman, you know what it looks like. He stands taller, he speaks with more certainty, he takes risks he once avoided. Not because you nagged him, but because you reminded him that his dreams are real, that his fear is natural, that his next level isn't out of reach. It's just on the other side of trying. Think about this. What challenge is the man in your life facing right now? Is he in a career that no longer excites him? Does he talk about goals but hesitate to act? Does he dream quietly, almost apologetically about something more? Most men aren't lazy. They're just stuck between the fear of failure and the fear of being judged for even trying. They were taught to succeed quietly or not at all, so they hide their ambition under sarcasm, distractions, or surface-level habits. But when someone sees through that, when someone says, "I know there's more in you, and I believe you can reach it," it shifts everything. That one sentence can start a fire that changes his life. He begins to train harder, think deeper, move smarter, not because he wants to impress you, but because he finally feels supported enough to stop running from his potential. This is what love-stoic connection does. It offers stillness in the ER storm, but also wind in his sails. It doesn't push, it encourages. It doesn't pressure, it empowers. And in that space, he grows. Sometimes it's a physical challenge like running a marathon, mastering a new skill, or fixing something with his hands. Other times, it's emotional, like learning to communicate better, heal old wounds, or lead with vulnerability instead of fear. The form doesn't matter. What matters is that the challenge calls him up, not out. It invites him forward. And when he looks over and sees you rooting for him, not correcting, not managing, but believing, he steps into a version of himself that surprises even him. that feeling that's worth more than pleasure, that's purpose. And once a man feels purpose, he doesn't drift, he doesn't avoid, he focuses, he commits. He shows up with clarity and energy because he knows that he's not just growing for himself. He's growing for the life he's building, the relationship he's protecting, the future he's claiming, and all of that started because you saw his greatness before he could prove it. Do you know how rare that is? Most people only believe after success. But the woman who believes before the win, she becomes unforgettable. And this is where many relationships break down. Not in conflict, but in complacency. The man stops trying, not because he stopped caring, but because he stopped feeling challenged in a way that made him grow. And she stops encouraging, not because she stopped loving, but because she assumed he didn't need it. But encouragement isn't weakness. It's the spark of evolution. It says, I see what you're made of. Let's rise. So if you want a man to feel alive with you, challenge him not with criticism, but with vision. Not with control, but with confidence. Share your dreams and invite him to share his. Set goals together. Take on projects together. Learn new things together. Show him through your own example that growth isn't just possible, it's beautiful. Because here's the other truth. Men are inspired by the women who grow too. When he sees you pushing yourself, evolving, embracing your own challenges, he doesn't feel threatened. He feels called higher. And when you climb together, there is no limit to how strong your bond becomes. That's what Stoicism teaches us: to pursue mastery, not perfection. To seek progress, not applause. To move forward with intention, not validation. When a man is in that mindset, and he has a partner who reflects it back to him with grace and fire, he becomes unstoppable. Not in a loud performative way, but in a steady, quiet, grounded way. The kind of man who builds things that last, who loves with direction, who wakes up excited to keep becoming more, because you helped him remember that growth is the greatest reward. And in that space of shared transformation, intimacy deepens, sex becomes richer, conversations become more expansive, love becomes more rooted, all because you saw challenge, not as conflict, but as opportunity. So the next time you wonder how to connect more deeply with a man, don't just comfort him, challenge him, invite his brilliance, encourage his expansion, walk beside him, not ahead or behind, and speak to the version of him that's still unfolding, not as pressure, but as possibility. That is how you become not just his lover, but his partner in purpose. And trust me, he will never forget the person who stood beside him while he grew into the man he always wanted to be. If this resonates with you, don't forget to like this video and comment number 1 below if you're feeling inspired. And of course, subscribe to this channel, because the next truths we're uncovering will challenge you to rise in ways you never expected. 5. A sense of legacy and purpose. There comes a point in a man's life, whether he's 28 or 58, where he stops thinking only about success and starts thinking about significance. Not just what he's doing today, but what he's leaving behind. It's an invisible shift at first, one that creeps in quietly between career milestones and relationship transitions, between fleeting wins and deeper reflections. He starts asking questions that don't always have answers. Will what I'm doing matter 10 years from now? Will anyone remember how I lived? Did I just chase numbers? Or did I actually build something that lives beyond me? This isn't about legacy in a grandiose, egotistical way. It's not always about fame or fortune or awards hung on the wall. Legacy for most men is about impact, about whether their life actually made a difference to the people they loved, the communities they were part of, and the values they stood for. And the truth is, this quiet desire for meaning makes men happier than sex, because sex touches the body, but legacy touches the soul. And when a man begins to feel that his daily actions, no matter how small, are stacking into something lasting, something meaningful, something that reflects the best of who he is, he walks differently. He speaks more deliberately. He chooses more intentionally. That's because he's no longer operating just for pleasure or praise, he's working for purpose. Stoicism teaches that the wise man thinks about his death every day, not to be morbid, but to be mindful, to remember that our time here is limited, and therefore what we do with it must matter. And for men, that reminder isn't always depressing. It can be energizing, because suddenly the arguments, the status, the performance all start to fade in comparison to something more profound, the idea of building a life that outlives you. For some men, this means mentoring others, passing on wisdom that would otherwise die with them. For others, it's raising children not just to succeed, but to be kind, principled, brave. For some, it's creating a business, a movement, a piece of art, or even a tradition that carries their values forward. Legacy isn't about what you leave for people, it's about what you leave in them. And when a woman understands this part of a man, when she recognizes that behind all his striving is a deep longing to leave something better behind, she becomes a powerful part of his journey. She stops asking only about the what and starts asking about the why. Why does this matter to you? Why are you chasing this goal? Why does this dream keep showing up in your mind? Those questions don't pressure him. They open him. They invite him to articulate what he rarely gets to say out loud. That he wants his life to mean something. That he wants to be remembered, not just loved. That he wants to know when the dust settles, that he gave more than he took. And that someone saw the effort he made to be better. Most men won't voice that directly. They've been taught to stay practical, results-driven, emotionally contained. But that doesn't mean the desire isn't there. It just means it's buried under layers of expectations and conditioning. And when a woman helps a man reconnect to his sense of purpose, not by telling him what to do, but by listening deeply to what matters to him, she activates a part of him that most people never get close to. That activation creates alignment. He starts aligning his time with his values, his energy with his mission, his love with his legacy, and suddenly the relationship itself becomes part of that legacy. It's no longer just about what you do together. It's about who you become together and what that becoming adds to the world around you. This is the essence of a love-stoic bond, where two people are not just emotionally connected but purposefully driven, where love isn't just a feeling but a force that makes both people better. And here's something few women realize. When a man is supported in his purpose, he doesn't retreat from the relationship. He roots deeper into it. He wants to share it, grow it, protect it, because it's no longer a distraction from his mission. It's the foundation of it. You become his center of gravity, not by demanding more, but by helping him become more. Think about how many men walk through life feeling like what they do doesn't matter, like their work is just a paycheck. Their effort just another cog in a machine. Their sacrifice is unnoticed. That's the slow death of meaning. And when meaning dies, so does motivation. But when a man feels that he's contributing to something lasting, whether that's in his home, his work, his community, or his relationship, his motivation doesn't just come back, it multiplies. He wakes up differently, he plans differently, he loves differently, and that difference is felt in everything. So if you want to inspire a man beyond physical desire, tap into his sense of purpose. Ask him what legacy means to him. Ask him what kind of man he wants to be remembered as. Then really listen, not to respond, not to redirect, but to reflect. Reflect his values back to him. Help him see that what he's doing is meaningful, that the effort he thinks goes unnoticed is shaping something real, that the way he teaches his children to be honest, the way he shows up for people without asking for praise, the way he keeps pushing even when no one's watching, that all of that is his legacy in motion. And he might not realize it until you say it out loud, but once he does, he'll start walking with a deeper sense of pride. Not arrogance. Pride, the quiet kind that comes from knowing you're building something that matters. That's the kind of pride that holds a man together in hard times, that keeps him focused when he feels lost, that gives him direction when everything else feels uncertain. And when you're the woman who helped him see that, he won't just love you, he'll respect you, he'll trust you, he'll include you in decisions he used to make alone. Because now you're not just a partner, you're a compass. You're part of the reason he feels grounded and guided. That's a position of deep influence. And it comes not from control, but from understanding. The kind of understanding that Stoicism calls wisdom. And wisdom, once experienced, is never forgotten. That is why legacy makes men happier than sex. Because it's not just a moment of pleasure, it's a lifetime of meaning. And when a man feels that his life has meaning, he becomes the kind of man who brings meaning into everything he touches, including his relationship with you. 6. The freedom to be vulnerable. There is a truth about men that most people never talk about. A truth so buried beneath cultural expectations and childhood conditioning that even most men struggle to admit it to themselves, let alone anyone else. And that is this: men want to be vulnerable. Not in theory, not in fleeting, tear-filled movie moments, but in real life. They want to be able to drop the armor, to set down the burdens, to stop pretending they have it all together when their insides are tied in knots from pressure, fear, guilt, and grief. But vulnerability isn't weakness. It's humanity. It's not a flaw. It's a function of the soul trying to breathe. And for men, breathing in a relationship means being able to say, "I'm not okay right now," and not be seen as less. This is why the freedom to be vulnerable makes men happier than sex. Because sex may provide momentary relief, but vulnerability provides real release. Vulnerability is where healing happens. It's where trust is born. It's where love goes from surface to soul. And yet, despite how transformative it is, most men hide this need, because the cost of exposing it has at some point been too high. Maybe he was mocked as a boy for crying. Maybe his father only valued stoic toughness. Maybe in a past relationship, the moment he opened up, it was used against him. So he learned to wear masks. Learned to say, "I'm fine," instead of, "I'm afraid." Learned to shut down before someone could see the parts of him he wasn't proud of. And every time he silences that vulnerability, he loses a little more access to himself. But what if that man meets someone different? Someone who doesn't punish vulnerability, but welcomes it. Someone who doesn't need him to be perfect, but invites him to be present. Someone who understands that true strength isn't the absence of emotion. It's the courage to express it with honesty and dignity. That someone might be you. You may not realize it, but your response to his soft spots, to his emotional confessions, to his moments of doubt and fear may be the single most important part of the relationship to him. Not your looks, not your accomplishments, not even your affection, but your ability to make him feel safe enough to be seen. That's what makes you unforgettable. That's what makes him stay. Not because he has to, but because he finally wants to. Because when a man can be vulnerable with you, he stops bracing for pain. He starts reaching for connection. And that connection becomes sacred. Stoicism at its heart doesn't deny emotion. It honors it. It teaches us to master our emotions, not mute them. To channel them into strength, not shame. When a man lives in that mindset and finds a woman who mirrors it, who can hold space for his softness while respecting his strength, he finds balance. He finds peace. And peace for a man who has spent his whole life performing, protecting, proving that peace is priceless. But vulnerability can't be forced. It must be invited. That means when he does finally open up, when he admits he's struggling or shares something from his past or expresses an insecurity, you don't need to rush in and fix it. You don't need to analyze it. Just be there. Just listen. Just let him see in your eyes that nothing he said has changed how you see him. In fact, maybe it's made you respect him even more. Because here's the paradox. Most men fear that being vulnerable will make you pull away. When in reality, it's often the very thing that draws you closer, because there's something deeply bonding about someone trusting you with their pain. It means they believe you can hold it. It means they see you as emotionally mature, as safe, as someone worthy of their truth. And when you handle that truth with care, not walking on eggshells, but holding it with grounded love, you become the exception. You become the one he doesn't have to lie to or posture for or compete with. You become his calm, his refuge, his real, and the relationship stops being a performance and starts being a partnership. A real, gritty, beautiful, healing partnership where no one has to hide. Imagine the relief of that. Imagine the intimacy. Imagine the depth. That's what love stoic connection is made of. Not empty words, but emotional weight that's shared. Not perfection, but presence. Not control, but closeness. And when that becomes the norm, love changes. It stops being something you fear might fade and starts being something you know you can build on. Because vulnerability doesn't destroy love, it deepens it, it refines it, it makes it honest. And honesty, when received without judgment, creates the safest love a man has ever known. So, if you've ever wondered why a man pulls away just when things get closer, or why he shuts down when life gets hard, the answer might be simple. He doesn't feel safe to be vulnerable. But if you can offer that safety, if you can show him again and again that your love includes all of him, not just the strong, funny, attractive parts, he will begin to show you more. He'll talk more, trust more, try more. He'll stop hiding the parts of himself that scare him. And when he stops hiding, he starts healing. When he starts healing, he starts connecting. When he starts connecting, love becomes something sacred. And in that sacred space, he no longer craves just a physical touch. He craves emotional truth. Not just closeness, but clarity. Not just affection, but alignment. Because now he knows he can bring all of himself into the relationship and still be loved. That kind of love doesn't just feel good, it transforms a man. It quiets his anxiety. It grounds his purpose. It gives him a reason to rise with hope. And that more than anything else is what he's been longing for. So if this speaks to you, if you now understand why vulnerability matters so much more than you ever thought, like this video and comment number 1 if you feel this kind of emotional connection is powerful. And don't forget to subscribe because the next chapter of this series will help you apply these truths in ways that make love stronger, safer, and more real than ever before. So here we are. We've peeled back the layers one by one, and what's left is a truth that too few people ever see. Men are far more than what society teaches us to expect. Beneath the desire, beneath the silence, beneath the roles they've been conditioned to play, lives a complexity, a depth, a quiet longing for meaning that rarely finds space to be expressed. The 6 things we've explored: being seen without judgment, feeling like a hero, sharing effortless laughter, being challenged to grow, building legacy, and having the freedom to be vulnerable. These are not just emotional luxuries. They are the essence of what makes a man feel truly alive. And here's the shift that happens when you begin to understand this. You stop approaching relationships with strategies and start approaching them with vision. You stop asking, how can I keep his attention, and begin asking, how can I help him expand into his highest self, and how can we grow in that together? That shift is not just attractive, it's rare. And in a world obsessed with appearance, it's substance that becomes unforgettable. This is the heart of love stoic connection. It's not about constant reassurance or overfunctioning. It's not about losing yourself in trying to be everything for him. It's about showing up with presence, discernment, and a calm inner strength that invites him to show up fully too. Stoicism, after all, is not about emotional denial. It's about emotional depth lived with intention. It's about knowing what matters, discarding what doesn't, and building a life that reflects your values. When 2 people love each other from that place, not of need but of shared purpose, what they build can't help but last. So, the question now isn't just how do I attract a man? It's what kind of space am I creating for a man to feel seen, supported, and free? Because the woman who can offer that kind of space without games, without control, without fear, becomes more than just a partner. She becomes his peace, his mirror, his motivation, and sometimes even his turning point. And that kind of woman, she doesn't chase love. She creates it quietly, powerfully, intentionally, just like you've started doing now.